The grand chandelier hummed above them, crystals catching the light like frozen applause. In the center of the room, marble floors gleaming beneath polished shoes and inherited arrogance, a chessboard waited. It was all in jest. They'd laughed when they picked her. The maid, barely 5 feet tall, with her hair tied back in a neat braid and hands that smelled faintly of soap and lemon polish. She stood quietly, apron still on, as if she were about to dust the bishop. Instead of play him, "Come now, just one move." One of them chuckled. Another leaned in, grinning. "Let's see if she knows which way the horsey jumps." Laughter, but not from her. She didn't speak, didn't smile, just stepped forward slow and steady and studied the board, like it was a room that needed cleaning. The room was watching her now. She could feel it. Heat rising from a dozen eyes waiting to see. Her fumble, waiting to feel superior. She reached out gently and moved a pawn, then stepped back head low, still silent. There was a beat, then another, and then the laughter stopped. The man across from her, a finance heir with champagne in his breath and too many wins in his past, blinked, stared at the board, looked up, then back again, because what she'd done wasn't random. It was sharp, precise, calculated. A move out of old, dusty gamebooks written in languages most of them couldn't even read. Something shifted in the air, a quiet electric hum. She was no longer invisible, and the game had just begun. If you've ever been underestimated, mocked, or made to feel small, stay with us. Watch the rest, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. Before the laughter, before the pawn, before the room fell silent in awe, there was the silence she lived in every day. Her name was Anya. She woke before the sun, always had. In the blue-gray stillness of morning, the world belonged to her and her alone. No voices, no footsteps, just the soft hum of the old radiator and the familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet. She moved like memory, quiet, steady, essential. Each morning began the same. Wash her face, tie her braid, tuck a worn book into her apron, pocket. Then it was tea, always strong, no sugar, and a short walk down the alley behind. Her building, boots crunching on gravel. The mansion she worked in sat like a monument to wealth and old names. Stone walls, heavy drapes, silver polished weekly. She cleaned around people who didn't notice her, who left rooms mid-conversation and never returned, who said her name only when something was wrong. "Anya, there's a stain. Anya, the vase. Anya, more ice." And she nodded, always nodded, because anger is loud, but dignity is quiet. She lived alone, in a room no bigger than a closet, with peeling wallpaper and a single chair by the window. There were no pictures on the wall, no visitors, no voice at the end of the day, asking how she'd been. But there was the board, an old wooden chessboard, smooth from years of touch. The pieces were mismatched, some carved, some plastic, one pawn a bottle cap she'd painted white. It had been her father's once, her only true inheritance. He'd taught her when she was 6, not with the intention of raising a prodigy. He was a factory worker, rough-handed and tender-eyed. But every evening, when the machines quieted and the world seemed too cruel for one more story, he would set the board between them. "Every piece has its own way of walking," he told her once. "Like people. The knight, brave but crooked. The queen, powerful but lonely. The pawn, small, slow but capable of anything, if it reached the other side." That stayed with her. Long after he was gone, after he passed, chess became a ritual, a form of prayer almost. She didn't own a clock, but could tell time by the rhythm of her mind at the board. 15 minutes to open, 10 to build the center, 20 to push forward, retreat, reframe. Even when she worked 12-hour shifts, when her hands ached and her feet throbbed, she always gave the game its due. In the quiet of her room, she played herself, studied old Soviet endgames by flashlight, memorized grandmaster moves from free PDFs at the public library, moved pieces in her head, while scrubbing marble floors. She saw combinations in her dreams, forks, pins, traps, disguised as kindness. It wasn't ambition that drove her. Not pride. It was something simpler, order. In a world that often felt cruel, chess was proof that every move mattered. She didn't tell anyone. Why would she? Who would listen? She was a maid. Invisible. Replaceable. A background character in someone else's story. But she had something they couldn't see. A quiet fortress. A mind sharpened by solitude and shaped by grief. And a memory that remembered every mistake she'd ever made. So she wouldn't make them. Again. That morning, the day of the party, she had cleaned the study first. Dusted the chess set they kept on the corner table more as decor than game. Polished it gently. Set the pieces back in. Starting position out of habit. The guests had begun to arrive as she cleared champagne flutes from the parlor. Loud voices. Perfume that lingered in her lungs. A world of gold watches and effortless cruelty. And then someone saw her. A joke began. Let the maid have a go. She hesitated. Not because she was afraid, she wasn't. But because she knew what it meant. To step forward was to cross a line. To be seen. To lose her invisibility. But then she remembered her father's voice. The pawn only needs one chance. And that was enough. The pawn still sat where she'd placed it. Bold, unassuming, and impossibly precise. Across from her, the man adjusted his blazer like it might straighten his thoughts. The room had quieted, but not in reverence. Not yet. More like confusion, like a crowd waiting for the punchline to land. She got lucky, someone muttered. Beginner's move, said another, sipping a drink, watching like it was a novelty act. But the man at the board, Lucas Hayes, son of a diplomat, champion of 3 local tournaments and proud member of the University Chess Club, wasn't smiling anymore. He tapped his fingers against the edge of the table, then moved his knight. It was a decent move, logical, textbook, and exactly what she expected. Anya didn't flinch, didn't grin, just reached for her next piece and moved again. A quiet, elegant shift, her fingers so steady they looked bored. Lucas glanced at the board, then looked up at her. Something in his eyes flickered. Surprise, maybe, or doubt. The others had gathered around now, half amused, half curious. Phones were out. One girl whispered, "Should we be filming this?" While another replied, "Wait till she loses, it'll be funnier." They didn't understand what they were watching. To them, this was still a game of status. A room where bloodlines whispered louder than logic. But Anya wasn't here to perform. She was playing the same game she always played, the one that lived in her bones. Lucas leaned in, voice low. "You've done this before." She didn't answer. Not because she couldn't, but because the board was speaking for her. Another move. Then another. She sacrificed a bishop with no hesitation. Gasps echoed. "Wait, what? She just gave that up. She doesn't even know what she's doing. She's throwing the game." Lucas smirked, reassured, took the piece without question, and then froze. There was a pause, a subtle shift in the room. 1 or 2 board members sat up a little. Straighter. Douglas leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his palm. "The numbers are fine," he said, waving at the screen. "But real strategy comes from experience, not spreadsheets. No offense, but have you even led a team before?" Sarah nodded again, steady. "Not formally, but I've been watching every part of this system for years. I've helped train new staff, written process manuals, fixed routing bugs no one else even saw. Quiet work doesn't mean unimportant work." That answer didn't win any applause. But it didn't need to. A woman near the end of the table, Denise, head of compliance, watched with interest now. Not smiling. Not interrupting. Just watching. Listening. Douglas, however, wasn't done. "Let's be honest," he said. "We're not here for warehouse theory. We're in the middle of a shareholder storm. We need leadership, not line item reviews." He turned to the others. "Are we really considering this? A complete restructuring plan from someone who's Never even managed a division. It was a clear challenge. A warning. And Sarah could feel the moment closing, like a door slowly swinging shut. But she didn't step back. She stepped forward. You don't have to like the voice that brings the truth, she said. But you should still listen to the truth. Her tone never rose. She didn't point fingers. She didn't demand anything. She simply stood there, holding her ground. If I'm wrong, ignore me, she continued. But if I'm right, and I believe I am, then this company can save tens of millions of dollars without a single layoff. Without hurting drivers. Without shortcuts. Just smarter planning. Silence again. But this time heavier. Not awkward. Uncomfortable. Because when someone who's always been overlooked finally speaks with clarity, it forces people to listen. Douglas didn't smile now. He folded his arms again, jaw tight. No reply. The chairman cleared his throat. Thank you, Miss Carter, he said. We'll discuss internally. Sarah closed her folder slowly, nodded politely, and walked back to her seat. No one clapped. But no one laughed either. They didn't know it yet. But something had just shifted. She was no longer invisible. She was undeniable. The same glass table. The same leather chairs. But the energy in the room had shifted. Gone was the polite laughter. The casual arrogance. The room was tense now. Quiet. Focused. At the front of the room stood Sarah. This time not with papers. Not with folded hands or nervous glances. This time she stood beside a live dashboard projected onto the big screen. Numbers. Flickering in real time. Maps pulsing with movement. Updates flowing second by second. Today, she began, we completed our 2-week trial using the proposed reroute. Model in Region 3. She tapped her laptop. The map zoomed in on the state. Then the cities. Then the routes. Once tangled, now clean, flowing like rivers. Delivery speed improved by 26%, she said clearly. Fuel costs dropped 18%. On-time arrivals hit 97%. Driver overtime was cut in half. No fluff. No buzzwords. Just data. Clear. Clean. Undeniable. She tapped again. We didn't buy new trucks. We didn't change drivers. We just thought differently. A hand went up. Denise, compliance. Can we verify this through the operations team? Already done, Sarah answered. 3 supervisors signed off yesterday. Independent review this morning. She paused. Let the silence sit. Then she turned to Douglas Thorne. He wasn't smirking this time. You said strategy doesn't come from spreadsheets, she said calmly. But strategy also doesn't come from sitting at the top and ignoring the floor. She walked over to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, drew 2 simple boxes. This, she said, pointing to the first box, is how your old plan moved packages, based on volume, fixed timing, standard routes. It looked efficient. She drew lines between the boxes, thick, looping, messy. But in reality it caused backups, empty trips, and a whole lot of waiting. Then she turned to the second box, her model. Lines connected cleanly, short, quick, balanced. This is how we tested. Based on live data, flex routes, real-time warehouse, updates. She stepped back. Same people, same trucks, same budget, better brains. There was a pause, then a slow exhale from the chairman. He leaned forward. Why didn't anyone else see this? Sarah looked him in the eye. Because no one was looking at the whole picture. Not for long enough. And not with the right questions. Douglas stood now. His voice was tight. Let's not pretend 2 weeks in one region proves everything, he said. This isn't magic. It's not, Sarah replied. It's math. She tapped again. New numbers appeared. Graphs. Efficiency over time. Cost per mile. Customer service ratings. All climbing. All in green. I didn't come here to sell magic, she added. I came to offer a better way forward. Silence. Then the CFO, usually quiet, leaned in. Can this scale? Already working on it, she said. We'll pilot 3 more regions next month. If the numbers hold, National rollout by Q3. No one spoke, but eyes moved, back and forth. One by one, Douglas took a step forward. And you think you can lead that? Sarah paused, then walked to the center of the room. I already am. It wasn't said with pride or ego. It was just the truth. This company doesn't need louder voices, she said. It needs smarter systems, and someone who knows how they actually work, from the inside out. The room was frozen. Denise nodded. Then another board member. Then the chairman. And Douglas? He sat back down slowly, not defeated, but finally quiet. The chairman tapped his pen against the desk. We'll take this to a vote. A few moments passed. Hands went up. One. Then another. Then another. Unanimous. Sarah Carter was voted in as the interim chairwoman of strategy. Not because she demanded the title. Not because she played politics. But because she did the work. Day by day. In silence. Until no one could ignore it anymore. And when she sat back down, this time at the head of the table, the room didn't laugh. They listened. The vote had passed. Unanimous. And yet, for a full 5 seconds, no one moved. No one even reached for their coffee. It was as if the entire room needed a moment to breathe in what had just happened. Sarah sat quietly in the chair at the head of the table. The one she never imagined sitting in. The one no one ever thought to offer her until now. The glass table, once cold with judgment, now reflected a softer glow. There were no more smirks, no more offhand remarks. The laughter was gone, replaced by something else. Respect. It didn't come in applause. Came in stillness. Then Denise broke the silence. I'd like to be involved in the next phase, she said. When you expand the pilot. Want to help make sure the numbers scale properly. Sarah looked at her. Not surprised. Just quietly grateful. A few seats down, the CFO cleared his throat. You mentioned integrating driver feedback into the live routing system. Could we build a dashboard for that? Sarah nodded. We already started one. It's basic, but we're testing it with a few routes next week. One by one, board members leaned forward, not to question her now, but to learn from her, to understand the system she'd lived with for years, the one she had quietly reshaped. For once, people didn't look past her. They looked to her. And then Douglas Thorne spoke, slowly, cautiously. I owe you an apology, he said. It was the girl who'd laughed the hardest earlier. She wasn't smiling now, just watching Anya, with something close to admiration. Anya nodded. Of course, she said softly. She didn't carry a sense of victory, only calm. The same calm she'd carried into every room, every day, while no one was watching. Julian stood slowly, brushing off his sleeves. He hesitated, something rare for him, and looked at her not like an opponent, but like someone who had been taught something. I thought I was playing a maid, he said finally, then paused. I was playing a master. A few people laughed under their breath, but not mockingly. He held out his hand. Anya looked at it for a moment, then shook it, not for show, but because she understood. Even people who are handed everything sometimes need to lose before they can see clearly. Good game, he added again, this time quieter, truer. The staff had begun to peek in through the archway. Other maids, kitchen hands, groundskeepers. Word had spread, and now they stood there, eyes wide, hands covering. Smiles. Not because she'd embarrassed the rich, but because she'd been seen, truly seen, not as the help, not as background, as a mind, player, a force. Later, as the crowd began to drift away, Anya gathered the pieces quietly. She handled each, one gently, placing them in their wooden box. The same way she folded linens, wiped glass, returned books to their shelves. With care. Anya, a voice said behind her. It was Lucas again. He held something out. It was a worn, red hardcover. I found this in the library last year. My 60 Memorable Games, Fisher. I think you'd like it. Maybe you've already read it, but... She took it in both hands. No, she said, running her thumb over the cover. Not yet. He smiled, a little shy, then turned to go. As the lights dimmed and the last of the guests left, Anya stood at the doorway of the ballroom, book in hand, apron still tied. She wasn't proud. She was present. No longer invisible. No longer underestimated. Just known. And that, more than anything, was what she had wanted. Not applause. Not admiration. Just to be understood for who she really was. A girl with calloused hands. A mind like a blade. And the heart to stay steady, even when no one was watching. The boardroom looked different now. Same chandelier. Same polished floors. Same chairs lined like chess pieces waiting for purpose. But the energy, that had shifted. It had been a week since the night they called the match. Though Anya never did. To her it was just a game. Another in a long line of moments where quiet skill met loud surprise. She hadn't expected anything afterward. And yet, everything had changed. The head of the house, the matriarch, had called her in 2 days later. Anya arrived in uniform, hands folded, expecting to be asked to explain herself, or apologize for distracting the guests. But the older woman had simply stood by the window, arms crossed, gazing into the garden. They said you moved like you were reading ahead, she said without turning. They say you played him blind. Anya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The woman turned. Her face was soft, thoughtful. Do you know we've never had a chess club here? She asked. Anya shook her head. We do now, the woman said. And I'd like you to lead it. That was the first time anyone called her coach. Not maid. Not girl. Not quiet thing in the hallway. Coach. Felt strange in her mouth. Like new shoes not yet worn in. But she nodded, accepted, and began. The club started small. 2 students. A borrowed folding table. An old clock with one side slightly slower than the other. Anya didn't start by teaching openings. She started with posture, stillness, tension. Before you can see the board, she told them, you have to learn how to look. Her voice was never loud. But it didn't need to be. They listened. By the end of the month, the chess room was full. Not just with boys who once laughed, but with girls who had never been invited to the table. With students who once swept the halls. With people who had always stood on the edge of strategy, now drawn to its center. They called her Miss Anya sometimes. Out of habit, maybe. Out of reverence. But no one said Maid anymore. Not because the uniform had changed. She still wore it when she cleaned. But because they finally saw past it. Julian came to the second club meeting. He didn't bring a board. Just sat in the back and listened. Watched how she spoke to the others. How she corrected gently, encouraged firmly. After, he waited by the door. You made it look easy, he said quietly. Anya smiled. It never was. He nodded. I'm learning that. Lucas brought her more books. Annotated matches. Game theory. Others began asking her opinion on things that had nothing to do with chess, strategy and debate, decision-making in group projects. Not because she was loud. Because she had earned trust. Piece by piece. Move by move. Spring came. And with it, the regional invitational tournament. The university had never submitted a team before. But now, with Anya as coach, they entered. 3 players. 2 had never played a competitive match before this year. 1 was a groundskeeper's daughter. All 3 placed in the top 10. Anya stood at the edge of the gymnasium, arms behind her back, as the crowd cheered for her team. She didn't step into the spotlight. She never had to. One evening, back at the manor, she paused in the hallway outside the same ballroom where it had all begun. The table was gone now, but the light still shone the same way across the floor, and the silence still hummed, waiting to be filled. She stepped inside, not as a guest, not as staff, just as herself. She set a board down, unrolled a cloth mat, placed the pieces gently. Saturday, not to prove anything, not to fight for recognition, just to play. She moved the first pawn, let it glide forward, and smiled. Have you ever been overlooked? Walked into a room and felt like no one really saw you? Like your name, your story, your skills. All of it stayed invisible while someone louder took the space? If so, this story was for you. Anya didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand to be noticed. She didn't seek power or pity or revenge. She just kept showing up. With quiet strength. With care. With excellence even when no one was watching. And then, when the moment came, she didn't change who she was. She revealed it. That's the kind of power we don't talk about enough. The kind that doesn't look like shouting from a stage, but like listening before speaking. Studying in silence. Rising with grace. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're there right now. If you've ever had to prove yourself in a room that underestimated you, we'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments. You never know who it might help feel seen. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone, or even of yourself, please like, subscribe, or share it with someone who needs it. Because sometimes the smallest stories carry the deepest truths, and the quietest voices are the ones worth hearing.